Today I want to improve the data loading for one of EmberMap's pages. So I thought I'd make a good video to just walk you through kind of what that looks like in a real app, how I would think about improving the data loading of the routes and different parts of the screen, and see if we can end up with something a little bit faster than we have today. So here I'm running EmberMap locally, but proxying to production. And the page I want to work on is this video page. So when you load this page, it kind of takes a while, and especially on slower connections, you can really notice it. Now, if we look at this page, we see that the video renders the actual hero here and details about the video, and it also renders the series panel, which has all the videos from the series. So if we go to something that has a lot of clips in it, like our podcast, and you'll see here that there's a lot of episodes here. And so, the design for data loading in this app was really built at the beginning of our site when we didn't have a lot of videos. But now that we do, we can see that the requests have gotten quite large. So for example, right here, we're kind of loading a bunch of stuff. On this page, we query the series, but then we also go ahead and include the clips, and each one of those clips encodes. But for this page, we don't need all of the encodes for all of these clips. And even for the main part of this page, we don't even need all of those clips. You could imagine we could render this whole page with just this video information right here, and we could kind of lazily load this part of the page. So that's exactly the strategy I want to take in this video. So let's start by opening up this route. And this is what we call the topics route right here. This is the topic, and this is the chosen clip right here, or the video. So if I pop open pods, topics, and we have the selected topic. Here we have kind of the index subroute and the video subroute. And that's for when you go to the overview of a topic right here. So we see this is kind of the index subroute of a topic, and it has the list of all the videos, the clips, and then we can visit the actual clip itself. So if we take a look right now, the actual topic route is what's responsible for loading the series. And this is where the includes are happening. So this is loading basically the whole graph of data. And over here in the index, the route is empty. So it's just reusing that model. And in the actual video route, the video route is just assuming that the relevant clip has already been loaded in the store. So we're using peek all to just find the right clip by slug. And that's again because it's a child of this topic route, which is responsible for loading that whole graph of data. So I think the first step here I want to do is just say that we actually don't need this whole graph to be in the model hook of this topic route. Otherwise, it's going to block every time, and that's exactly what we're trying to avoid. So I'm just going to copy this and just comment it out for now. And let's assume that this parent route just loads the right series. So we're still going to query by series, and we're going to query by slug here. And then this is just older code. So when we return that query, we'll return the first object. So now the topic route will just return a series, and it won't include everything related to that series, which is kind of what's slowing us down. So first, let's come back to one of the podcast pages and just refresh this. And this is how it's currently working. So we get the user, but we also get this big graph right here. So this is where we have the includes. So now let's save this update, our new model hook here, and then see what happens. Okay, so the new network request is just querying by slug. We see there's no includes. So the query is faster here, but we obviously have some errors because this template was written assuming that the entire graph was loaded. So I can open this template and we can look down here, and here is the series playlist, and that is that sidebar that shows all that graph of data. So if we just comment that out for now, and next we'll just pop open this route right here. Now previously this was just returning the clip by slug, and it assumed that all of its encodes were loaded, which are needed for the video player. And again, that's because our original query was including the clips and their encodes. But now they're not, we're just loading the series in the root. So what we want to do is basically load this clip with all the data that we need. So let's hide this and basically rewrite our model hook here. So the video is going to have a video slug. We'll use the same approach here to use our filter. So we can load all of the clips and we'll filter by slug. And we definitely want the encodes for this clip. And we'll also load the series relationship so that this clip is associated with it. And then we'll return the first clip here. So let's save this and give it a shot. All right, so our page is rendering.
Cool.
And it looks like the video is playing. We've got the transcript here. And so the main content of the page seems to be working. And if we look at the network requests, we see we've got the series at that root being loaded, and then we have our clips query going out. Great. So we're loading a lot less data to display this page now. If we crack this open, we can see that there's just a few included models as opposed to that 100 or 17 or whatever it was before when we were querying that whole graph. So now all we have to do is get this sidebar showing up again that does query the graph. But we want to do that out of band. We don't want to block this page on rendering that. So let's come back to our code. I'll go ahead and delete this. And take a look at that component. So originally, we were passing in model.series. And now if we pass that in, well, we get some of the information, but we're not seeing all of that data along the side. So let's go ahead and open up the series playlist component. So we see here it takes a series and an active clip, and that's how it knows which to highlight. And then in the template, we render some information from the series here and here, and then we render a video list which passes in series.clips. The only problem is series.clips hasn't been loaded yet. And so what we want to do is make this a data loading component. So I'm going to import task from Ember Concurrency, and we're going to write a new task called load series. This is going to be a task, and it's going to use the store. So let's go ahead and import service, and we'll inject the store service here. And we basically want to do something very similar to what we were doing over here in our original route. So our slug will come from this.get series.slug, since we're passing in the series. Let's go ahead and yield this network request. So we're going to load by slug again, and we want to include all the clips. And we don't need the encodes now that the video route is responsible for loading those itself. So let's save this and give it a shot. I'll just pull this up so we can make this a little smaller now. Refresh. And nothing's happening, and I think it's because we forgot to kick this off. So let's go ahead and kick this off on did insert element. Okay, so there we go. We saw the data pop in. But it's a little weird because it kind of comes in after it has this initial render and then it comes in. So what we should be able to do is grab this new load series task, and we want to say if load series is running, then we'll just leave this blank for now. Otherwise, let's go ahead and render that list. And now, if we zoom this out, we can see, this thing only exists in two states here. It's either not showing while it's running or it appears. So that's definitely a little bit better. Now, If we make this a little bit taller, we should be able to see more of it. It's nice that this is faster, but I don't really like the way this looks just appearing like that. So let's come over here and change this to a liquid if. And that wasn't really super noticeable. So with these, I usually like to use the built-in crossfade animation. So let's see how that looks. Okay, so there's a little bit of something weird going on here. If I zoom out, refresh, you'll see that there's kind of an initial paint, and it looks like our sidebar originally did before we loaded the data. It just shows that one episode. Then it fades out, and then it does kind of a weird animation. So what's happening here is something interesting that I figured out while making this video. I'm going to go ahead and drop a log right here and say is running is true. And then let's throw one right here, is running is false. And let's just pop open the console. So you'll see that is running goes from false to true to false on this initial render. And so because we're actually kicking off this task on did insert element, that very initial render is going to have is running as false because the task hasn't had an opportunity to start running yet, to actually kick off. So we're going to get the initial paint with is running as false. Then on did insert element, that next tick, the is running task is going to be true because that task will have had an opportunity to start. And so when that flips to true in this template, we're going to go ahead and clear this out. So the first render, it's false, and so we're going to render this. But we don't have all the data since load series hasn't actually done any work yet. So that's why we get kind of this incomplete template render first, then we get a blank, and then we get a fade in to the complete template. Whereas what we really want is for the initial render to be nothing. So one way to do this is to use loadSeries.performCount. And this is a property on Ember concurrency tasks that's going to be 0 until it starts running. And so if we wrap this entire thing inside of that perform count, then none of this will render until that thing has actually had a chance to start performing. So that way we should avoid this kind of back and forth between these two states that we weren't really expecting. So let's go ahead and save this and check it out. Okay, so now we see that there's just these two states right here. And if we refresh, we see that some of that jarring animation has gone away. Now, there's something else that I found out while preparing this video. If you notice, when I refresh this, there's kind of this sliding motion where when this fades in, there's also kind of a wipe down. And that's because by default, liquid if automatically grows to expand and make room for the contents of its children. But in our case, when the user is kind of looking at this page, we don't need to smoothly grow this because there's nothing below it that the user can see. It's not going to reflow any part of the document that's visible. So there's this option we can pass to liquid if called enable growth, and we can just go ahead and disable it. And that way, if we zoom this out and refresh, we just kind of have this nice smooth fade in over here. I can pop open our transitions and change this so that we can see it a little bit better. So now it's really smooth and there's no wiping motion, and that way I barely even see it. It's a very subtle touch. And if I were to go ahead and come to the network, and let's go ahead and throttle this to, let's say, slow 3G. And reload this. now we've got this page loaded much faster than this whole graph of data. And again, if I were to go back to one of these bigger series, like the podcast here, and then go ahead and throttle this, we're going to get this rendered much faster. And we just have this kind of nice fade in along the side. So I think that is a really nice touch. Now let's go back and check out that topic page. So I can come to all of our topics and select one. And it looks like we've maybe broken this page. And again, that's because originally this topic index page had this empty route here because it was just inheriting the model from the parent. But now the parent doesn't query that full graph, so we want to go ahead and grab this, come over to our index route, and we're going to want to reload the series with all of the clips. So instead of the params coming from this, because the params are on this parent topic, we can just use this .params for topics.topic, get the series select that way, and then reload all of these series and grab the first one. Let's see if that fixed it. And there we go. Now we've got our topic pages back. And if I go to a video, we'll see that it renders fast. And so we see Ember Data's cache working here for us. We can navigate among the data that we've already loaded, and it's fast. But if we go to a new series, say by clicking a link on the home page here, then we can get to this video page much quicker and lazily fetch the rest of this data. And this is really more important for situations where folks are coming in directly to one of these pages. Now, if they load this page, maybe by clicking a link on Twitter or something, it's going to be a lot faster on that initial render. Now, we've talked about skeleton screens before, and sometimes in design you'll see, instead of just fading this in from white here, you might actually want to design a skeleton screen. So if we find that series playlist template, if we're running that load series task, we can remove these logs now, we could actually write a skeleton screen here. So we have some UI components that help us out with this. So we could render a UI title that's small and a skeleton. And if I save this, you'll see that there actually is a little bit of detail there. And you could also grab some of this part of the template. We'll render a small skeleton paragraph tag here. And we also have a version of this that's a skeleton label. It's just one line. So that gives you a little bit of a sense that there's some content to show, and you can even make that animated. You could do a bunch of stuff with that. So that's an idea for how to add just a little bit more design to that part of the UI. But it's also totally acceptable to just leave this blank. I think this still is a vast improvement on what we had before. And the fade in is subtle, so it's not really distracting if you had, say, started watching the video. So there's a lot more we could do to speed up this page, but I think this is a great start. We've deferred loading this massive graph of data up front for every video page, and now we can start to optimize it even further.